Hi everyone, welcome again to our virtual bariatric support group. I am excited to join you once again. My name's Colleen Tewksbury. I am the bariatric program manager. I'm also a dietitian by training. I'm a behavioral researcher, a clinical administrator. I wear a lot of hats. So I am oftentimes disconnected from being able to interact with patients, you all on the other side of the screen on a regular basis. So I'm really excited to be able to regularly meet with you all on a weekly basis and chat a little bit about what might be challenging you during this time. So I am very excited for today's topic. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm hoping to get a lot of great discussion going with everybody. So what we'll do, I'll give you an overview, so walk you through the screen that you're looking at right now. We'll go over some general guidelines. We'll dive into our topic today and our guest who will be joining us for discussion. And then we will wrap things up for today with some final words and next steps for next week. All right, so welcome again. So let me walk you through how this is going to function. I've mentioned this a few times now. We would love to be able to have a virtual chat room. We've had about 40 to 60 people log into these at a time. It'd be really hard to do a virtual video room with everyone. So we are adapting and trying to provide you with other formats that protect your security and your confidentiality. We don't violate any privacy laws, and we're still able to provide you some level of support. So as of right now, this platform is the platform we'll be using. So if you have suggestions, feedback, anything that you want to present, let us know. That includes any sort of topics. So with that, I will take a moment to introduce our guest for our discussion today. So we have Marissa Ferrito. She is currently a fourth-year doctoral candidate at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine and is a doctoral extern through the Center for Weight and Eating Disorders. Many of you may meet with the psychologists for before surgery from that center, so you are likely familiar with those clinicians. She received her master's degree in mental health and wellness counseling from New York University. She has experience in providing therapeutic services, psychological assessments, pre-surgical evaluations, which she's currently doing, and you may meet with her at some point in time, and clinical presentations. She's in the process of applying for her fifth-year internship in a behavioral medicine setting, and she says that her favorite part of working from home right now with the pandemic is getting to spend lots of time with her cat, who sits between her and her keyboard while she works. Can't we all relate to that right now? So welcome to Marissa, and she will be talking to us today about food policing and unsolicited advice.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I see a lot of the comments in the Q&A. So it looks like we've got people on both sides of the surgical process today. I'm very excited to be meeting with you and talking about the food police. So I thought I couldn't find a better comic to summarize the experience of those Google experts who are going to give you advice no matter what it is. So we'll go into it. I'm going to switch over here to the agenda. There we go. Just to show you a little bit about what you can expect for today. So we're going to talk about identifying like who are the people that are giving this unsolicited advice, who are the food police. Figure out who's in your lineup of those people, because there's a couple of very common trends we'll see in individuals who give this unsolicited advice. Explore a little bit about why people do this, why people make comments, why people push food, just to give a little bit more understanding. Talk a little bit how it's going to make you feel, and then how to respond and use support, because that's definitely something that pushes our social comfort sometimes. Please ask questions throughout. I do have moments where I'm going to ask for feedback from everyone, but yeah, feel free to let me know if you have any questions or something just doesn't make sense. All right, so without further ado, so this is the lineup. These are the people who give this unsolicited food advice. And there's really 4 characters that I really have identified that are likely to be the ones to do that. These are the people who are the experts, there's the critics, the bad influences, and the food pushers. And we're going to break down all of these different characters and figure out what your lineup is and the kind of things that these people are likely to say or do to try to influence your food behaviors. So we will start with the experts. And as you kind of hear a little bit about this and who these people are, please write in the chat, what have your experts said to you? You know, what are the things that you notice people like this saying or trying to push? These are the types of people who really believe that they know more about dietary sciences than you and really want to impose this information on you, whether or not they're qualified to do so. They're often people really just regurgitating headlines from news articles and don't really know what they're saying, may not have even fully read what they're spouting at you. This information may or may not be accurate. And it really often the content includes fad diets or fear tactics regarding dietary choices. There's lots of different things that I, hear from the experts, let's see. So when there's some research that comes out about certain artificial sweeteners might be linked to carcinogens and red meat was going to give you cancer. And these are the people who then take that information, grab a hold of it, and really try to get in your head about it and speak to you. And that's kind of what the experts are. So I'll give you a minute to see if anyone has any input of the types of things that their experts have said. What some of the things that I have heard a lot of are these the people who say you really should be eating only organic, or, oh, organic is just a scam, it doesn't actually mean anything. You really should be buying no fat, no sugar, no GMO, or whatever the most recent fad is with food, with like the different food fads that are going on. And the people who are like, well, all you really need to do to lose weight is drink apple cider vinegar twice a day and dance in a counterclockwise circle naked during the full moon. These are the types of advice where, of course, if it was just that easy, everybody would be doing it. So those are the kinds of stuff. And let's see, looks like maybe we don't have too many experts in our lineups. Colleen, Is there any comments that I'm missing here?
Yeah, so not as much around experiences people have had, but Jay here has fantastic advice where she had said that she got people she trusted. They now tell her not to go on weight loss meds and what she's eating and shouldn't be eating, and it's very frustrating. So that sounds like a really tough situation to be in.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough one, especially when you're all going through a process, meeting with medical professionals who are talking to you about what your steps should be, what you should be doing, and what everything means. And then when other people tell you not to trust them, that can be really confusing and definitely frustrating. And we're going to talk a little bit later in it about some of the feelings that these types of comments bring up, and kind of what do we do with that information.
Marissa, can I share an anecdote?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so we actually, many of you have shared that you had surgery prior to a few years ago. You may remember an old book that we had, the nutrition book that was available. And that book, it was a 1-inch binder, and it had really big on the front, Penn metabolic and bariatric surgery on the front. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we redid the whole thing. And part of that process, we had focus groups from people just like you who had gone through the process or were going through the process and what they wanted for that book. And one of the things that we were blown away by is how many people had said that they either took the front sheet out of the book or they turned it around because walking around with their nutrition book, they got unsolicited comments from, as you put it, the experts of, other patients or other people just walking around, even in the Penn Medicine centers or outside of Penn Medicine, who saw that book and saw the title and automatically thought that they were an expert and wanted to give their advice. So I will add to this, if you don't mind me adding, that it was really powerful to hear that from all of you. And as you know, we switched the book. It's really small in the corner, and we have really big life gained on the front. That was a request and a power of all of you patients out there to make sure that we're also help supporting you to mitigate any of these comments. So we've heard from many of you about these expert situations. But Sue also mentions, Marissa, that she feels like the advice comes at us every day via the television. She just told her sisters because they are extreme keto people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, the television and media is kind of a whole nother beast that is throwing so much information. And I think what helps to keep that in mind and to deal with that information is remember that the end goal of all of that information is just to sell you something. You know, it's not really to help you stick with your goals or whatever. They're kind of capitalizing on, you know, weight being such a high valued issue right now and trying to sell some products. Like, you know, see a lot of like Instagram influencers pushing that like belly with that skinny belly tea thing, flat tummy tea. And these are just products they're trying to sell. And really the medical professionals and your surgical team are the ones who have this information that's about you and helping you. And fad diets, you know, they're always going to be a thing. You know, keto is kind of the rage right now. But, you know, paleo has been, Atkins before, South Beach. There's always going to be somebody where it's like, this is it, this is the diet. And, you know, we'll go through some strategies to do it, but like, that's great if that works for them. You're doing what your surgical team has told you to do. Yeah, I see. So some people in the chat have gotten feedback that surgery is not healthy to them because they know people who've had complications. Or someone that in their work culture always kind of pushing latest trends and products and shaming. You know, it is a shame that people feel the need to comment so much on other people's food choices and, you know, why is this the thing that people can comment on. Yeah, I see Deborah, you know, shared the people telling her about the surgery is not healthy as a result of knowing complications. And I see Colleen asked if she wanted to share how she handled that situation. Deborah, if you're comfortable, I think that would be really helpful information. Every surgery comes with risks, absolutely. But if you're in this process, whether you're going through the surgery or you've had it already, your surgical team has decided that these risks are worth the benefits for your health and lifespan. So we'll move on to the next character in the lineup, and these are the critics. These are the people who are always going to be criticizing your food choices, whether in a kind of a positive or a negative way. They might encourage you to consume more food or less. They usually come with warnings about whatever it is that you're eating or not eating. May come off as passive aggressive, whether that's intentionally or not, kind of depends on the individual. But this kind of information is generally expressed as a level of concern. So if anyone has had these critics in their life, you know, please feel free to share in the chat about what those critics have said to you, how it made you feel when you heard stuff from the critics. These are the kind of things that people are like, you know, are you eating enough? Or don't you know how bad diet soda is for you? Or don't you know how bad fatty foods are for you? Or sometimes the passive aggressive, oh, wow, like you could eat all of that? Like I could never. And these are, you know, the nitpickers. They're really going to pick at all the different things that you're eating and doing. And there's always going to be something wrong with it that they're going to pick out. Yeah. Ooh, excuse me. Hiccups. So yeah, critics also come in all kinds of different forms. You know, it's not just about food and your beverages, but you know, you'll see these types of people. This kind of feedback will come in all areas of your life, you know, important decisions, career, family, relationships, all that kind of stuff. But specifically for food, this is the type of information we see. So calling this the loving sabotage. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when the people see, especially after surgery, you're going to be eating less at meals. You know, you're not necessarily going to have as much food as, you know, what the person next to you, what your aunt, what your grandmother, what your mom is eating at those meals. And they might be concerned and worried that it's not enough. And, you know, it's not your job to have to educate those people. But it does kind of wind up being your problem when they're criticizing your choices. So again, we'll come up with some great options that you can use to respond to these people. And I'll give you all a moment to share what your critics have been saying.
Oh, we have an excellent comment from someone anonymous who says, how can you live without a certain food? I can never do that.
Oh,
ooh,
gosh.
Marissa,
Yeah.
how would you recommend someone address that type of comment?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And like kind of me, like it's shoving in your face this thing that you've chosen to avoid for your health. You know, one of the best ways to kind of address a comment like that, be like, yeah, you know, like say it's chocolate, you've given up chocolate, and be like, oh yeah, chocolate's really great, but I've decided to make a decision for my health and my future. I talked to my doctors, and this is what's right for me. But you eat it.
Excellent. Okay. And then we also have from Deborah here, not a food expert, but someone told me this. Surgery is not healthy because, oh, sorry. She replied to this. I was reading her comment before. This is a response from Deborah. She told her that she has experts on her team who went to med school and have extensive professional training, and she's relying on their expertise, and just shut that comment right down. Thank you, Deborah, for replying to that. I don't think I can make that public, so I'm glad I was able to respond or read her response here.
Yeah,
excellent.
I think that's really an amazing way to handle it, is to just kind of say, like, you know, my information comes from my medical team. And if they push you on it, because some people might, you know, not everybody's just going to give up. You know, you could say, you know, I really, you know, I don't, it seems like you're doubting my medical team, or it seems like you're trying to ask me to go against my given medical advice, and I'm not really comfortable with that. And that sometimes gets into a little bit more confrontational than people are comfortable with. And we'll talk a little bit about how best to prepare yourself for that situation in a little bit.
So we have a comment from Jay as well, who had said she is someone who tends to be a critic across the board for her, who's close in her life. She cites that it's her sister, and that it's across the board. So that sounds really challenging if it's also not only related to food, but everything's perceived as wrong and the wrong way of going about it. Do you have any comments or reassurances for Jay?
Yeah, I mean, Jay, it sucks, you know, when people are like that, and there's going to be critics, and sometimes there's those people you just can't please. But I would say it gets a little bit of solace in the fact that you're doing what's right for you, and, you know, figure out the best ways to either change the conversation or move forward without it dragging you down. Because if she's got a problem with it, that's her problem. Let's not let it be our problem. And you know, I wish you the best, because that's a difficult situation to be in when people are really constantly nitpicking whatever it is you're doing and your decisions. That is tough. Right, so let's look at the bad influences. These are it's fun to be bad friends. They might tempt you to go off of your food plan, to indulge in something. Will often minimize the consequences of giving in. You know, might be a little bit dismissive or come off as dismissive of your efforts. Oh, it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. And will often offer to join you in whatever they're encouraging. If it's another glass of wine, if it's a piece of cake, or, you know, those brownies in the break room, if we're ever back in a work setting. These are the types of people that are going to try and tempt you. And, you know, when we go over why people do that, it might become a little bit clearer as to why people will do this type of behavior. But, there's always that bad influence of like, oh, it's just one, you can work it off tomorrow, or just make it a cheat day. And, it's a different situation. You're making a lifestyle change that requires, committed effort. It's not just a diet that you can start again tomorrow. And people don't always realize that. So what have your bad influences said to you, or done and offered, or tried to get you to indulge?
All right, so as we're coming in here, as people are typing in, I think this is just working as a dietitian. We hear about this all the time. This is a really tough thing. And I will admit, I'm a millennial, a proud millennial who was raised with a certain set of books, who will say, not endorsement, but for Harry Potter, one of the common themes was it's even harder to stand up to your friends. Even more so than standing up to your enemies. That can be really challenging. That's a really tough situation for someone to be put into. When this is someone typically in your network and somebody that you care about, that's really tough. We hear about it all the time. I think one of the things that I at least do when talking to patients, and Marissa, I think that this is something that would be wonderful to hear your thoughts and expand upon, is really just starting to talk about in that situation, what happened, how did it happen, and would you change it next time? How could you change that next time around to get a positive, will get the outcome that you're looking for, whether it be support or a different situation? Do you have a different approach, Marissa, when you're talking to individuals?
I think it really depends on who these influences are for them. It's definitely harder when it's loved ones and friends, because there are added complications to your personal relationship with them. So one of the best ways you can do this is if you're comfortable and they know about the surgical process you're either going through or have had, is sharing that and letting them know how best they can support you. So other things you can do is sometimes just try and redirect the conversation. Can be a helpful way to just kind of shift the focus, especially if you're not very comfortable being like confrontational with people. So maybe also suggesting non-food related fun activities or indulgences that way then you can both enjoy and have that fun to be bad moment that doesn't compromise the values and decisions you've made to get you here through this process. It's definitely a difficult situation, and hopefully the people in your life, if you are able to talk to them about it or redirect them, either pick up the hint or understand why this is important to you and change their approach to interacting.
Yeah, so Marissa, we have a fantastic comment from Janice here, who reports being 9 weeks out from having a sleeve, and reports that they're almost 70 and have learned over the years, which we are all here for this wisdom, that most people do not know what they're talking about, no matter what the subject is. So best to just smile and then go to expert sources and find out the answers. You can ask questions, no matter if you think it's silly. Today we have so many resources to go to, not like when they were growing up. That's fantastic. Sometimes it's just okay to smile and turn away. What are your thoughts, Marissa?
I think she's absolutely right. 90% of people definitely have no idea what they're talking about. And, I think the access to information is almost a double-edged sword. I think there's so much information out there that we can consume, but then there's also so much garbage information out there as well. So you got to make sure that you know your sources and are going to places that have accurate evidence-supported information. But sometimes the best thing to do is honestly sometimes just yes people. Just like, oh yeah, okay. And then move on. And that shuts them down because you're not arguing with them anymore, because some people might just want to pick a fight. But then, yeah, go do your own research and get the information you can. Use your surgical team, your doctors, whatever sources you trust that are going to give you good information. If it's something spikes a curiosity for you, go ask. There's no stupid questions.
So, Marissa, I think that this may be a good transition comment for you. So, Jay is mentioning around bad influencers around dessert tables, and potentially, I think that she may be hinting towards how to handle food pushing.
That is a beautiful transition. I will switch my slide over to the food pushers. These are the hosts that can't stop moving until they've fed you, and they generally are offering those sweet treats, dessert items. Can sometimes come off as a little bit aggressive feeling when they're trying to convince you, might make you feel like you're going to offend them if you say no, or like they'll be insulted. They might be participating in the eating behavior as well, adding that like extra layer of social pressure. It might feel like a trap. And it's often presented as a means of showing care or affection. You know, food is so wrapped up in our culture and in the way that we relate to each other that sometimes that's kind of the only way people know how to express affection or like show you that they care about you. And I know everybody experiences food pushers. You know, there's that stereotypical, going to grandma's house and coming out rolling because you've been stuffed with so much food, or so-and-so made their special pie just for you. You have to have a piece. And it's super not fair that when people are doing this to you, especially when you're putting so much hard work into making this really positive health change for you in your life, and people are trying to sabotage it. We'll talk a little bit too when we go over really the best ways to respond to all these people, about ways you can plan ahead and prevent some of this situation, and also just ways that you can respond to your.
So, Marissa, for the sake of time, can I ask you why do people do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I know I get a little chatty. We'll move on. So there's lots of different reasons why people make comments. I'm going to go through each of these in turn, so I'll just go on to the next slide. Ignorance. One of the favorite things my dad has always told me growing up, and it's probably one of the few nuggets I've kept from him, is that never attribute to malice what can be easily explained by stupidity. And it's a little harsh of a comment, but a lot of people don't really understand that offering food to you is a problem. Some people, especially if they've never struggled with weight, just don't have any concept of the struggle that other people might have. So you might have to gently tell these people what your experience is like and how they can help you. So these are the people that generally mean well, but are just completely oblivious to how this impacts you. One of the other reasons that people might make these kind of comments is out of discomfort. If someone else is eating in front of you and they offer you some food, it might be just because people freak out when they're eating and someone else isn't. As the discomfort you can see when people are unwilling to go to a restaurant by themselves or to sit alone eating lunch. It creates a real sense of discomfort for a lot of people. So they're offering food to be polite, whether or not the offer will be accepted. And one of the best ways you can kind of respond to people, making comments or offering you food out of this, for this reason, is that you're comfortable not eating, and tell them that they should be comfortable if they wish. And that doesn't always completely disarm the individual. And we'll go through some more strategies in a moment, but this is where those types of comments might be coming from. The next is jealousy. They might be jealous of your success, especially, the first time someone sees you after surgery, if you've dropped a lot of weight. They might be getting really jealous, and people who have struggled with weight might see your success, and when they haven't had it, it kind of springs that green little monster for them. And thin people who haven't struggled with weight, might also be jealous that you're accomplishing something and are proud of your achievement. It's unfair that some people can get jealous just by seeing other people's success, but it does happen. Now, a good thing to keep in mind is that this is their problem. This is not your problem. So do your best to not let it become yours. If they're jealous of your success, that means that you have something that they are jealous of. They have to be jealous of, that you've done something good for yourself here. And that's what's sparking this feeling in people. One of the worst reasons that people do this is sabotage. They might not want you to succeed. And, you know, this is not the norm, I would say, but it does spell trouble for a person, for anybody who's on a program trying to make healthier changes. They might suddenly develop a craving for your favorite food, or say demoralizing things like, you've always failed before, you're just going to fail again. Like, it's not going to be any different this time. And that really sucks that when people say stuff like that. You're best off ignoring these comments. Generally, when people are trying to sabotage you like this, confronting them can make the situation worse. And again, this is another situation where it's their problem. They have a problem with you making decisions to try to better yourself. Try not to let it influence your behavior. And if they offer you food or encourage you to eat, just be sure to refuse. And there are polite ways to refuse, but there are also times where a polite way is maybe not the way that's going to get through. So you have to kind of figure out and feel out the situation what's right for you. Another reason that people are going to be offering you food or pushing you about food is out of concern. They might think you're starving. It might look to them like you're absolutely not eating enough when they see what your portion sizes look like, depending on what their eating style is. They might be imagining themselves in your shoes, and they think that they would definitely be ravenous. So you must be starving. You know, I have to help you. You know, this is where that association of food with love and that really integrated way food is in our culture and the way we relate to each other gets complicated. Ways you can respond to this is, you know, assure the person that you're fine, that they can help you by ignoring your diet and not offering you any food. So that way then that they at least you give them a way that they can express their concern and care for you that's not offering you food. Ooh, I skipped to the next one. And then the last reason that people might be offering you food or giving you this information is testing. And this is also really unfair, but they might want to test your determination. They may be trying to tease you or see how serious you are. Like, this is cruel, but it happens. You know, we've all encountered people who are not kind. It'd be nice if, you know, everyone could just let everyone else be, but we've seen that's not the case. And the best way to respond to that is to show them just how serious you can be and how dedicated you are to be making these kinds of changes. So those are kind of the reasons. I want to hear a little bit from you all about how you feel when people are trying to push their food or opinions about your food on you. What does that bring up for you? I've included, you know, some really, really common, really natural reactions to these types of comments here. You know, you might feel guilty, pressured, confused, especially if it's somebody you love and trust who's giving you information or trying to push something on you, saying you need this. That might be confusing when you're hearing something different from your medical team. You might feel defensive or confronted, like you've been challenged. You might feel ashamed if somebody's, you know, trying to say that you're just going to fail again. And it's really invalidating of all the hard work you are putting in. And it's a shame that people feel this way. So what are some of the ways that it makes you guys feel? Well, Colleen, I can't hear you. I don't know if you're muted.
That was such a March move, you guys. I'm sorry about that. We're this far into telehealth, and I forgot to take myself off mute. That's awful. So we have a comment from Jay here. So when people make a comment of my size, I remember the saying I've posted, which is to be your own kind of beautiful. And I think that this harkens back to an area that we as clinicians talk about often in bariatric surgery and weight management, but doesn't really, I guess, penetrate the culture, that there are different movements like the body positivity movement to really help advocate, and we recognize that as clinicians, this isn't our space, as we can be cheerleaders on the side and really advocating for individuals, but at the same time, this is your space to feel comfortable. And going back to that body positivity movement, there are a lot of fantastic philosophers and academics out there who have written some fantastic books. I have a few I'm going to put in the chat, but if anyone has any additional ones, please add them in. But do you have any comments for Jay, Marissa?
Yeah, I think that's a really wonderful approach. I think a lot of times, especially with weight, people get so fixated on being attractive and the appearance of it when, you know, that may be a facet of it for you that's important, but in the end, the reason why your surgical team is making this decision for you is for your health. And you can absolutely love your body where it's at now and want to make it better, want to make it healthier. And that's a difficult place to get to, you know, based on our culture and the way that we're socialized sometimes, but it's a really great lesson. I think putting those notes throughout your apartment, Jay, is a great way to have that reminder of to be your own kind of beautiful. I love that.
And so one that I had put in here is around just generally for taking up space and really feeling worthy to take up space in the world. So we have an anonymous comment here that really harkens back to that of, I feel pressured because I don't want others to feel uncomfortable. So my my heart hurts hearing that. What are your comments and responses, Marissa, to that comment?
Yeah, and I think it's an excellent point. We are socialized to be nice and to, you know, make sure that we are making space for other people and not making other people uncomfortable. And when somebody's pushing and challenging you and trying to offer you things that you know are not in your plan or in line with your values, you know, it creates this crisis of courtesy versus like making the choices for yourself. And I think what's helpful is that to keep in mind is that they're making you uncomfortable, you know, like they've already made that decision to make you uncomfortable and put you in that situation. You know, you don't have to just go along with it because they've made that decision. And in a moment, we'll go and we'll talk a little bit about how to respond and what's the best way to respond. I see Janice mentioned, I come from a big Italian family where, you know, we used to do pasta dinners every Sunday with meatballs and garlic bread and, you know, carbs on carbs on carbs on carbs. And, you know, it's really easy to not even think about weight if they grew up with that and then never have gained weight as a result. And so, you know, I think the fact that he thought that you were able to control yourself around those foods shows that he, you know, has a lot of faith in you and thinks that, you know, you're doing really well. But I think, you know, you're right. You got through with him and you got him to understand what this means for you and the challenges it is for you. And I think getting through to family and loved ones to make them understand your struggles is huge for this process. Yeah, irritated. You know, I toyed with putting angry on this slide as well because I think it's totally rational to be pissed off when somebody's just trying to butt in your business. Of course, you're going to feel defensive. You know, it feels like a personal attack.
Yes, absolutely. And in here, we have again from an anonymous commenter, and this is something that's come up actually in the last 2 weeks around what I like to say, not bringing morals into food or weight, that what you eat or that your current body mass index is not an assessment of who you are. And unfortunately, culturally, we know, even from some of the researchers at the Center for Weight and Eating Disorders, and also from your home institution for PCOM, have really found that unfortunately that's not the general consensus view of the public, and something that we're constantly trying to be able to help support patients through, and that's not really how we should be valuing someone's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many more wonderful things about you than what you're eating. So let's
I like to say as a dietitian, this is dietitian approved, is that there's no such thing as a good snack or a bad snack or a good food or a bad food. There are salty foods, high calorie foods, sugary foods, high fiber foods, all different types, but no such thing as a good or bad one because there's no need to bring morals into it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how to respond. And, you know, this is actually my favorite slide I made of this whole thing. No is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. If they're not your surgical team, if they're not your medical provider, this is not something you need to be discussing with them. So you are more than allowed to just say no. No, thank you might go over a little bit softer with some people, but it's something that I think we forget, is that especially, especially with food, and I think especially for women, like, we're socialized that you can't say no, and you absolutely can, and it's 100% your right to do so. Beyond just no, again, you really don't have to explain yourself. It can be helpful to avoid being aggressive or insulting in that conversation, because sometimes that can just kind of aggravate it to something further. But if you're angry and someone's really not getting the hint, like, it's a reasonable response to get annoyed with them. What can be helpful, and this is something that I personally do because I hate confrontation. I avoid it like the plague. I never want to talk to anyone about anything, no matter how small, is coming up with these auto reply options so that you don't have to think of it. It's a pre-canned response. And that way then when people are pushing you or pressuring you, you have this ready and practiced so that it comes out easier. It's not something you have to come up with on the spot. So, what are your auto replies? Like, please add in the chat whatever you use as kind of your default response when people come up with you, pressure you about food, or make comments. Some of the ways that you can respond, like, I hope you enjoy it, but I really don't want the calories. You can kind of redirect the situation, like, gee, Grandma, I love your fudge, but I'm not really hungry. I would love a cup of tea. And that way then, like, it kind of gives an alternative option that is in line with your plan. But you can also say, thanks, but I've got it covered. Thanks, but I'm following my doctor's advice right now, and I'm happy with that. And that can usually shut the situation down. But find the language that works for you, that's natural with the way that you like to interact with other people. But coming up with these kind of canned responses takes some of the pressure of figuring out what to say out of that situation.
Marissa, can I ask you whether or not something you just said was intentional or not?
I don't know. Yes.
So I noticed that you, in nowhere in there, had an apology. We hear often that people will begin this with sorry, no. And I didn't hear that, or I apologize for not X, Y, and Z, or apologizing for declining. And I didn't hear that from you. Was that intentional? And yes or no, why?
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason to apologize. I don't think I realized I was doing it, but yeah, there's no need to apologize. Just like you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to say sorry for listening to your medical team, and don't have to say sorry for making choices that are going to better yourself. Especially, I know where we get concerned. A couple of people have mentioned that they don't want to make other people uncomfortable. And I think that's kind of where that, like, softening the rejection comes from. But it's not necessary. You're welcome to if you feel better about that, but you have nothing to be sorry for. You have nothing to apologize for by refusing something that you don't want, something that isn't in your plan, or making your own decisions there. Something that can be helpful too, redirection is definitely your friend in these situations. Asking a question, especially about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. One of a good response, which I toyed with whether or not to put in here because it's a little passive aggressive, but it depends on your relationship. But you could even say, like, oh, how has that worked for you? Because if they're going to butt into your food and your diet, that kind of opens the door for the other way around. And it really sometimes makes people realize that the question they're asking is invasive and not necessarily appropriate when you turn it around to them. But again, you ought to know if that works for you in your relationship with the person, because it can get a little confrontational there.
So we have a comment from an anonymous commenter who unfortunately had an awful experience in a store with disparaging comments made to her from someone, with her daughter witnessing it. And she went over to the manager and let them know about it. And we had heard this earlier from another participant, and I believe it was Janice, who had said, just smile, don't confront, it's not going to be effective, and just go about your business. Is that something that you think is, what are your thoughts on
Yeah,
those approaches?
I think, one, I'm so sorry that you were in that situation, because that's a horrible thing for someone to say to you, and especially in front of your daughter. I'm sure that brings up a lot more feelings for you. You know, I understand the not wanting to let your daughter see you not stand up for yourself. I think it's clear in this situation that you absolutely did stand up for yourself. You don't always have to respond or, you know, engage with a person to stand up for yourself. If they're being unreasonable, there's no reason why you have to engage. You went and took care of it. You went to, you know, whoever, the manager of the store, let them know what was going on and that this wasn't acceptable. And I think that set a great example for your daughter about how to handle inappropriate people and completely unacceptable behavior. It doesn't have to be a screaming match in the grocery store. It can sometimes just be you walking away, but letting people know, and even just letting your daughter know that this isn't okay. You don't have to take this, and leaving the situation.
Thank you, Marissa. Yes.
Yeah. But it's amazing how horrible the things that people are willing to say to each other are. I think it's gross. One of the other things that can be really helpful for you is planning ahead. And I know you've heard all about this throughout wherever you are in the surgical process, like for planning ahead for food events and tempting situations. But this is definitely something that can be helpful here too. Meal preparation, you know, if one of your big people in your lineup are mostly at work and are tempting you with food at work, meal prepping your lunch, you know, it's a lot easier to say no to pizza in the break room if you brought your own food that day. Or, oh, I brought lunch, I'm good. You know, researching restaurant options. Luckily, we live in a day and age where most restaurants have at least their menu available online. Some have nutritional information available online. You can plan, so that way then you it's a lot easier to make a decision and stick with it if you've already gone in with that plan, rather than letting someone try to talk them into an option that is not in line with what you'd like to be eating. Planning to share with a friend, take stuff home. Don't be afraid to ask for substitutions. I know sometimes we're a little hesitant to draw attention to ourselves if we're eating differently, but now like everybody's on some kind of weird restrictive diet, so it's not that weird to ask for vegetables instead of French fries, and no bread if that's whatever works for you. And you know, this kind of slide and this topic goes a little beyond just dealing with unsolicited food advice, but I think is helpful information for you just to plan for these triggering settings, because like social outings, family gatherings, you know, these are the times where we're around people that might try to tempt us. So having that plan in advance, I think, can really go a long way. And making those auto replies and having those ready, I think, is something that can be really helpful too. So, you know, if you'd like and you have a good suggestion on other ways that you can prepare for these situations, please write in the chat what's worked best for you. I think, you know, the easiest way to diffuse is really like, I know, thank you, I'm good. But having these options helps. Sometimes it does feel like we need to explain why we're refusing things, and that's not necessarily something you have to do at all. But having these options available, I think, makes it a little bit easier. Yeah. And then kind of like one of the really last pieces of information and tools I'd like to kind of give you for this is use your support system. Find your accountability buddy, you know, find that person that can be there for you, help you keep you on your plan. Maybe it's reciprocal and it's someone that you can help keep on their plan too, just to give gentle reminders of, you know, these goals and values you've set for yourself and help you stay strong in some of these really unpleasant situations. There are a lot of online support networks available. I'm sure some of you have found them during this time. You know, it's a time where we have to kind of rely more on the online support option rather than in person while we're all socially distanced. But there's so much out there. You know, Reddit has a bunch of great, I know Reddit has a whole bariatric subreddit of support. I know there's tons of Facebook groups. Reach out to a supportive loved one, you know, someone you know is aware of your goals and supports your efforts and is going to kind of be your cheerleader in that moment. And then if you really have questions or concerns about anything somebody has said to you, like contact your surgical support team. Like, these people are here for you, for your health. Talk to a medical provider. If someone said something about the way you're eating is dangerous and you're worried, find out. Like, there's, someone mentioned going to the experts, finding out the options, finding out what's true. And that's why that support system is there for you. So who is your support system? Oh, I see Janice mentioned that she plans ahead, spending 1 day a week making and portioning her food. Yeah, I think meal planning is one of those things where you have to think long term and be willing to put that effort in the moment to really benefit future you. And sometimes that's a hard decision to make, but when you think of the consequences of showing up to work without your lunch and then there being a bunch of pizza and it's going to tempt you and you're going to be hungry, that little bit of time you spent cooking on Sunday might help you and go a long way. And I don't know how much contact you guys have with each other. Are they able to contact each other in any way?
So there are non-Penn Medicine approved Facebook groups that I'm aware happen that we do not monitor. If someone's looking to get connected with a peer, we can facilitate that, but there isn't like a set systematic way for individuals to communicate with each other at this time.
Gotcha. Well, any way that you can kind of get contact with peers of, like, even if it's in these other the other online support networks, just talking to somebody who's going through the same thing or has gone through the same thing makes all the difference in the world. Because, like, I can spend all day talking to you about what you should or shouldn't do or say to these people, but if you haven't been in the situation, it's harder to fully understand. I definitely acknowledge that. So finding someone who does get it and has been through the same situation goes such a long way. So yeah, feel free to add comments or questions in the chat. This is really just a summary of everything we talked about today, just in case you forgot everything I said in the past almost hour. There's going to be lots of different people that are going to give you their unsolicited opinion. You have the lineups. Learn your lineups so that you know how to prepare for those individuals and the things that they're likely to say. The reasons why people offer you food or make comments on your food may come from a helpful or a malicious place. So, it's not your job to figure out what their problem is, but sometimes it can be helpful if it's a loved one to understand where they're coming from, and it might change how you approach the situation. If you forget everything except this, please take away that no is a complete sentence. You can just say no, and that's a perfectly acceptable response. But if you want to add more to that, have those auto reply options, continue to come up with these prepared responses, and plan ahead and use your support system. So yeah, does anyone have any questions, concerns, comments, anecdotes, complaints, anything?
So you can type those in the comments as we go through. If we aren't able to answer them right here and there, right now and here, we will reply to you in the text. Now, as a part of today, I will start to have our final comments and wrap up and next steps for you. So the chat function is live. So if you have any additional questions, you have comments, you have suggestions for other groups, I received a few of those. Thank you for putting those in the chat. I would love to hear them. Please share those with us, and we will direct any additional questions to Marissa as well. For now, I think a few items as a teaser for next time around. We somewhat got a little bit into weight bias and how to deal with really judgmental situations. So that is on the docket. So we will be talking about how to handle both external and also internalized weight bias coming up as well in these groups. Please put it on your calendar for next week. We have another evening session. It will be at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. It's on our Facebook page, which Deborah reminded me about. If you're also looking for support or to connect with people, you can always put out your comment and looking for support on our Facebook page as well. Many of our patients do follow that page and would more than likely be willing to reply.